Now, on this Kenya Power tariffs, I think Kenya Power is now engaged in a level of economic saboteur, frankly. Mm-hmm. If there's anything that will affect the economy, it is power. Because it underpins everything, not just manufacturing, but the entire cost of living, because everyone uses power. Yeah. And this is an institution that has enjoyed government protection for a very long time, including cash, bailout when we think that the situation has not been good, like last year. They got over 7 billion shillings from the government. Mm-hmm. And continuously we're giving them benefits. For example, for the heavy fuel oil that they use in the independent power, we give them the fuel cost charge, the inflation adjustments, foreign exchange adjustments, and everything to try and protect this institution in every way possible. But again, it's still the most expensive. If you look at the comparative power charges in Kenya and other countries in sub-Saharan Africa, we are the highest, all the way from Ghana to South Africa, to Egypt. We are the highest, and it's one of the reasons why our cost of production, we have lost competitiveness in our industries. It's mainly because of the cost of production. Many people get discouraged even starting a business that involves the use of power because of the expense of power. Mm-hmm. So we started these changes a very long time ago. But for me, I think there is massive corruption in this industry, fueled by the political elite. And I think there is no commitment, there is no political will to try and address the problem of Kenya Power. Last 2 years ago, the president set up a task force. Yes. They came up specifically with recommendations to deal with the independent power producers, because those thermal powers is the most expensive element in Kenya Power, generation power costs, and we don't need it. You have the cheapest and cleanest source of power in this country, and the geothermal. The cheapest and the cleanest in terms of the emissions. Yet, if you look at the mix, we use more of the IPPs because they belong to the political elite, and there is no will. If the government is really committed to engaging, to having competitiveness in terms of reducing the cost of production, in terms of, we need to address this matter. We need to shut down all those power producers and allow this company to use the cheapest source of power, and stop all this nonsense about power tariffs every other year.
Billow, we have Professor Iraqi also talking about competition, and alternative energy is solar energy, but we can see also from the regulator, especially when we are talking about EPRA, that in the latest set of regulations they published, they want the power distributor to have the sole task of determining which companies and individuals will supply the excess solar energy to the national grid. Of course, this will allow households and companies to enter into a 10-year contract with Kenya Power to supply the power at prices determined by the distributor company. And the new development also already is causing disquiet in some quarters, who argue that the power company will have an unfair advantage in determining supplier prices, a move that could see their solar energy undervalued. The new agreement also targets households producing solar energy but lack the means to store the excess power they produce, opening window into a partnership with the power distributor. And we know it is still playing catch up in the solar energy. And we saw also recently from one of the dailies that if now you're putting up your structure, your house right now, it is a requirement by Kenya Power for you to have a solar panel on top or patched atop your roof.
By Kenya Power?
By Kenya Power. That is a regulation that now. So are they also encroaching in that particular area where we want to uncouple ourselves from monopoly? You want to go the alternative way so that you can use solar energy, but still they're bearing down your neck. It's still Kenya Power with their monopoly, tenterhooks.
When we created Kengen, the objective at the time was to enhance the efficiency of Kenya Power, remove the power generation, let them focus on distribution. Then we came up with a regulator to determine the pricing. Again, the reason was to try and cushion Kenyans against the monopoly by Kenya Power, so that the regulator is the one who independently determines the costing. Then we went to the KETRACO and we said, distribution is again huge business. Let the transmission be done again by another company. Then we went to, all these things have been done to try and make the cost of power cheap over the last 2, 3, 4 decades. But I think clearly, in my view, maybe, I don't know whether we went wrong when we privatized and some people took interest in the company, and now we're being held hostage by vested interests in this industry. But clearly, what is happening, even with regards to this solar you have mentioned, is an attempt to try and bypass the role of the regulator, because the regulator is the one to determine the costing, even if it is green energy, if it is solar, whatever. That responsibility Kenya Power should not have a role in that.
It should be EPRA.
Absolutely, yes. Why should Kenya Power determine who puts what on their roof and and the supply, anything to do with supplying or generating energy and supplying it to the national grid? That determination of the costing and the pricing is the mandate legally of EPRA. And so any other attempt is to try and give Kenya Power an unfair advantage, and as they've done in everything else, because it's so insulated, it's so protected, that there's nothing like that institution in this country, in every aspect. Dibal, first you must know that Ministry of Energy, most of these organized institutions under this ministry are cash cows for the government. Cash cows. Whether it's, all of them are institutions that have been used to inflate procurement process completely. Kenya Power, for example, 5 of the top materials that they use, I can tell you this for a fact, and on national TV, it's normally reserved for the top political class in this country. When you talk of transformers, when you talk of the meters, when you talk of the cables, the conductors, the posts, these are things which are supplied, and that is where 90% of their cost goes. And everyone knows. That's why under the previous administration they had a whole ministry to try and take over, and they sent home everyone, and still nothing has been resolved. So it's the same thing you saw in KETRACO when that Marsabit wind thing, remember?
Yes.
That wrong payment that was made. And attempts were being made to refund that money. And people in government were saying, no, the money should not be refunded. You saw it all that played out.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about.
And no action is ever being taken on this. So, and if your energy costs in the world today, the major concern among any developed country, any industrial country, is about the cost of energy. If you cannot get your energy costs right, when this, you can never go anywhere. When this government of Jubilee came in 2013, they said we would have increased our power generation to 5,000 megawatts. You remember that? And most of it was from geothermal.
Yep.
And they undertook, the current president was a deputy president, they undertook to reduce the cost of power by 30%. In the 10 years, it has only gone up by more than 30%. And now we want to increase it by another 70%. And a few years ago, they reached a point where they said, we don't even have capacity, we don't have demand for the power that we're producing.
Yes.
The next day you hear we're importing again from Ethiopia, we're importing from Uganda. This is one of the most important cash cows in the government, let me tell you. Everything to do with the generation, the transmission, the supply. So unless really the government is committed to addressing this, we will never have a situation where we can be competitive in the region in terms of our productivity in every aspect. And I think this is something that the government needs to look at critically. And the gentleman, the government owns 51% of the shares in this company, right? And 49% is privatized. If this institution is not going to be managed properly, it's going to collapse. You've seen what happened in South Africa. Soon, we will have no power. Already, many of us in the industry, manufacturing, get power not more than 4 or 5 days in a week. The other 2 days, there's no power. Every day you open it, there are pages and pages of power outages. In homes, it's the same. So the thing is, you've seen the cost for energy like solar is about 14 cents or 15 cents.
Yes.
You come to Kenyan for geothermal, it's half of that. Then you go to the independent power, the thermal power, it's 3 times that amount, 3 times. And what has been happening is that Kenya Power has, because of that expediency, for the political expediency or whatever, they have been taking between 25 to 30% of their power from the thermal power, even when it's not absolutely necessary. This is because people have invested that thing. Government has given guarantee for many, many, many years to come. They've got into a situation where if you try to cancel those contracts, we'll be paying for the rest of our life. This is why that task force was set up. But none of the recommendations by that task force has been implemented to date. The government knows what are the issues. And in fact, the task force did indicate how the government can renegotiate and get out of these things. But there's no political will, because most of those things belong to people who are connected to those who are in power. That's the reality. So we are talking of economy, we are talking of competitiveness, we are doing things, but we know at the end of the day this country is not going to go anywhere because of the challenges that we face in this sector, which is critical.
Privatization of Kenya Power, could it, now we have the government's share 51%, 49%, is it one, I don't know if it's one of the listed that it should be fully privatized? And if at all, if it will be fully privatized, and what are some of the ramifications that will really come from the privatization of these parastatals at the end of the day? If there's a big issue with the corporate governance as it is right now, how will it be when it is fully privatized? Will we be able to afford the cost of energy, for instance?
Yeah. You know, when we started with the telecom, that was the same question that was asked. That the telecom, Kenya Post and Telecommunications is a strategic company. It's national, vital to the national interest of the nation, and so forth and so forth. Today, if you talk about power, you'll be told, oh, you know, you can't talk about privatizing. You saw it in Kenya Airways. We've pumped, hundreds, tens of billions of shillings, but we are told, this is strategic. We can't sell it. These things, they have been demystified in the Western countries. You've seen when Margaret Thatcher came in and, they went for liberalization of all those things, okay? British Power and, the telephones and everything. And let me tell you, we have seen in this country with the telephone. And the cost, when that thing was started, you remember we used to pay 40, 50 shillings per minute on Safaricom study. Yes, we were on phone that time. It was 40 shillings, 50 shillings per minute. Today you get it even for less than a shilling. So competitiveness is important. This institution, ideally, under the Monopolies Commission, should also be on the radar. Because if you are running any other sector, you're trying to continue, will be on your neck. On this one, it's insulated against everything in law. I think to privatize it would be the right thing to do, because the government has failed to ensure, and the reason why we have this problem is because of that 51% interest of the government. Because of the 51%, and you appoint the MD, you appointed the board, and they will do the bidding of the big guys. And this is where the problem is. That's the factor. We might be talking about the 49%. Interest by the vested, whatever, but let me tell you, the serious issue is that 51% controlled by government is the main issue. So we can, and we ought to have a second company, a third company, run this thing. Otherwise, we will not, without energy, costs going down, forget about industrializing this country, forget about being competitive, but forget about dealing with the cost of living.